Welcome to Watches with Dennis, everyone. My name is Dennis, as the name of the channel would suggest. And today we are going to go over 4 new watch reveals, along with results of a couple of polls that I have conducted over, I think, of the last 2 weeks, really. So we have some stuff. We have some content. I think it'll be hopefully entertaining. And if not, you can always find a different channel instead. But before we get into that, I do want to go ahead and note that I had a single video come out this week, another First Thoughts video, kind of like what I did last week, this time on the new Omega Seamaster Dark Gray that's in a new type of ceramic. And we will actually talk about that watch as one of the 4 that we're going to go over today. I thought it might be worth going ahead and doing that just to get some feedback from the live audience in terms of what their thoughts are on the watch. Though that video has had a decent amount of commentary come in, so I've been pleased with the reaction to the watch so far. Of course, not my watch, so I guess I shouldn't really care one way or the other how the reaction goes. But nonetheless, it seems to be a topic that people like to discuss, which isn't too shocking, really. I've found that Omega, polarizing to a degree, I suppose, a little bit. Popular brand overall, but of course, a lot of people have some critiques of it. And I think that's pretty par for the course for any sort of watch brand that has a lot of attention. So in addition, I do have a couple of links in the video description. Actually, I have several links. There's going to be a link to an article for each of the 4 watches that we're going to talk about, like I typically do. In addition, I do have a link to the 99 Cent Club. Thanks again. I had 3 people join during the last live stream, which was very humbling. But there's a link to that if you want to join. It's 99 cents a month, as the name would suggest. It gets you some emojis. Of course, there's badge tracking. There's a private channel on the Discord if you've got your YouTube integrated to Discord, which pretty much no one does. But if you do, it's an option. In addition to that, separate, you don't have to be a member of anything. There's also a link to an invite to the Discord channel. So for those that aren't familiar, Discord is an app. You can have it on your phone. You can have it on your computer. And it's a way where people basically make chat rooms all over the internet. And so we have one so that you can go somewhere to talk about watches. We have things for articles. We have most of the major brands have their own channels, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's the housekeeping out of the way. Wristwatch check. I'm wearing the Longa 1 today because I was in a jacket and tie yesterday, and that's what was on the desk before I fired all of this up. So before going into the watches, the 4 new watches that were revealed this week, let's go ahead and get the polls out of the way that I had conducted on the channel. Good morning, Kevin. Hope things are going well for you in Lakeland. So let's go ahead and do a screen share here. And this is the most recent poll, but I think it is the most interesting one that's happened in the last week, because the other one was more of an evergreen topic, but we'll get to that in a moment. So Only Watch, for those of you that aren't familiar with what's been going on, Only Watch is a charity. I believe it happens every other year, and a bunch of watch manufacturers make a unique one-off piece, a limited of one, a one of one, or an Only Watch that gets sold at auction to raise money for these charitable causes that Only Watch does. And it's pretty popular. I say it's pretty popular amongst watch collectors because we see a flex of creativity from a lot of brands to do their only iteration of a watch. Also, it can be helpful, I think, for people that are looking into their crystal ball to know what future watches are going to come out from brands, because it's not atypical for a watch brand to do an Only Watch and then do a variant of that as a mainline production or a limited edition run that isn't going for exorbitant charity auction price rates. Sometimes it's just a different dial color. Maybe they change the case material, things of that nature. So it can be a good way to kind of look and see what might be coming out in the next few months from various watch manufacturers. But as you can see from the poll here, this has now been delayed, and I'm not fully read up on this. I've thought about doing a standalone video on that, especially because I work for a government. I worked for a quasi-public agency for over 16 years, and I just most recently finished an over 4-year stint running a nonprofit. So I have a lot of nonprofit experience, and so I have some thoughts on what I've seen so far, but I want to dive in more into exactly what Only Watch has and hasn't provided, and I just haven't had the time to do it. But anyway, I'm somewhat rambling. So let's moving along. Only Watch has delayed the auction. They say they have until 2024. The thing that's happened is people have called out Only Watch, questioning for evidence that the money that they've been raising every other year when they do these auctions, which generate millions of dollars, by the way, millions, that they want some proof that it's actually going to the charitable cause that Only Watch proclaims that it's raising money for. And they released some, I guess, limited financial information that didn't really satisfy anyone in terms of either its scope or its accuracy. I guess it didn't fully account for everything, even within the time range that was represented. And I mean, again, there were millions that weren't accounted for. Audemars Piguet pulled their watch out of the auction. And I think the concern from Only Watch is this could have triggered a cascade effect. I heard on a podcast that FP Journe issued a letter. I guess the letter was in support of Only Watch. But as you can see, if you've got like AP on one side and Journe on the other, and are lines being drawn, or as a line being drawn, and people picking which side they're going to be on of it. So I think this delay was logical for Only Watch because they've lost control of the narrative. Now, what's going to actually happen with Only Watch moving forward? That was what this poll was asking. Only Watch claims that they're going through a financial audit, and then the idea is that this is going to help them explain their financial position, and then everyone's going to feel confident, and then they're going to move forward. I don't know if it is or isn't. Again, I have not fully read up on everything yet on this, but I think part of the problem that's coming up is the charities that Only Watch is almost like a philanthropy in the sense that it generates money through the auctions, and then it hands out money to like groups doing research in the realm of, I think it's muscular dystrophy. I'd have to check, but in the realm of their charitable cause. But it sounds like some of the people behind some of those companies that are, say, doing research and such are associated with the organizing board that kind of operates Only Watch. So are they raising charitable dollars and then handing themselves money in the for-profit side through grants? That's what I think the accusation is. So as you can see from the poll results, a lot of people, the majority of responding, we had 25 respondents to this poll, said that they think the auction doesn't end up happening in 2024. It's done. Only Watch just goes away. Kind of quietly, there'll be articles, there'll be coverage, channels like this one will probably talk about it when we realize it didn't happen, but that it basically just kind of disappears. Second most popular choice was the auction actually does happen in 2024. However, people remain uncomfortable that they don't trust the financials and everything. People still will want the watches, though. They're going to sell. And then after that auction, Only Watch never happens again. So it goes ahead and it finishes out the last one they plan to do this year because the watches are already made, but otherwise it's gone. So third most popular choice at 12% was that they actually get everything explained adequately, and then the auction goes ahead. Like basically Only Watch fixes its perception problem and then moves forward. 8% said that the audit that they claim to be doing will actually discover misuse and the auction will not happen and criminal charges will arise. My guess is because this is structured in Monaco, and I'm not really, I think it's Monaco, maybe it's Morocco. One of the M words. I don't know. I've heard that their charity regulations are very loose wherever they've organized their Only Watch association. So I'm skeptical that one's going to happen. And then 4% just said something else that I didn't put in the list. So anyway, so that's what's going on with Only Watch. Again, I might do something more standalone to really dive into that because I do think it's pretty interesting in the sense that this is a pretty big deal to a lot of people. I'm not a big auction fan in general. However, Only Watch was always very interesting just because of the content and the number. I mean, it's not like teeny tiny micro brands. Again, we talked about Journe and Audemars Piguet, but like Patek Philippe, Moser, it's a range from independents to really well-established Tudor. I mean, big brands are at Only Watch. It has a lot of participation. Good morning, Tuna. Welcome to the live stream, and thank you for being a 99-cent club member. And Polipo, you were on, I believe, last week. Welcome back, and I hope things are going well for you out in Italy. So, second poll before we get into our watch topics was one I did almost 2 weeks ago, and that was case materials. What is your favorite case material? And if you're wondering, my head is always covering the other, so that's the one you can't read. So pretty basic, 79 votes. A lot more people had an opinion on their favorite watch case material, which isn't too surprising. And we had a whole bunch of options. And by a whole bunch, I meant 4, because I can have 5 poll options in YouTube, and I have to put other because I can't cover everything. So that always takes 1 up. So I think the results by and large here aren't particularly surprising. Steel, easily the most popular. 2/3 of the voters said some form of steel is what they look forward to most as a watch case material. A tie between titanium and gold. That was actually really interesting watching the poll, because when the poll first started, for about the first 4 or 5 days, gold was in the lead. Titanium overtook it. I took the snapshot this morning and they were tied. So pretty big split between titanium and gold there at about 13% each. Platinum, which I kind of regret putting platinum on the list. I didn't really, you can tell I didn't use my brain very much. There aren't that many platinum watches really. And the price delta from gold to platinum is almost, I'm going to use the word ridiculous. It's ridiculously high. And the reason why I think it's kind of ridiculous is, and I have not checked this week, but my understanding last I was aware, the price of platinum is actually less than the price per gold at this stage. So whatever, it's harder to machine. Watches aren't going to go just with what the market says. So, okay, it is what it is. And then I kind of wish I'd put ceramic in instead, because I think we're seeing a lot more ceramic watches lately. And so I just, ultimately, I think I stuck platinum in because I kind of have a bias to dress watches. And so that's why it was in my headspace. And I should have been a little more realistic with what most of the audience would probably be interested in. But whatever, it got 4%. So, it's an option people chose. So there is that. And then 5% picked other. So again, based off of that other, ceramic, carbon fiber, and it would, clearly none of once we got past steel, titanium, and gold, they just weren't popular choices after that. So yeah, it kind of is what it is in that regard. There were some comments below on the video, not very many. I think some were kind of talking about like the flavor of gold, because again, when we say gold, what do we mean? There are a lot of people that are fans of white gold for whatever reason, that they like that it looks like steel, that they like that it's just not yellow. I'd say lately, it seems like most watch manufacturers that do gold do rose gold or something like that, red gold, pink gold. I think rose gold and pink gold are synonyms in one regard. However, I've also read, I think according to Wikipedia, they are not. It has to do with the different, how much copper's in one versus the other. Obviously, it's the same percentage gold in all iterations, because in most of these cases, the cases are literally in 18 karat. So it's whatever that remaining percentage is, and what that mix of other materials for the alloy that makes it vary. I don't know if anyone does cases in something lower than 8. Well, I think there's that Omega's bronze gold, which is like a 10 karat. Maybe there's still some brands that do 14 karat. 14 karat was more popular in vintage watches. It's not so common anymore, it seems. But anyway, overall, my thoughts are I think this is pretty predictable. I think platinum is so minimal because a lot of people probably have never handled a platinum watch. I haven't. It's very, very expensive. And the look of platinum, well, it does look different than white, gold, and steel. But I don't want to suggest otherwise. You can get that similar look with other more affordable metals. So there's that. Gold, obviously, you've got the 3 main types at this point: white gold, yellow gold, and rose gold. So again, for dress watch folks, I think one of those 3 typically meets the condition. I'm kind of getting to the point where looking at dress watches, I don't even, by and large, I don't know, where my brain is will vary. I'm not sure long-term I will continue to consider steel for dress watches, and maybe I'll just do gold with dress watches because I've got enough sports watches that can be steel. Steel being big is no surprise. It's quite affordable. It's easy to machine. You can do stuff with it, like you can PV decode it. It's a nice look. It's pretty scratch resistant. It's anti-corrosive. lot of appeal there. And then titanium, I think titanium is kind of polarizing. Again, you have grade 2 and grade 5, and on the more affordable end, it tends to be grade 2. So you're very limited on what you can do with the metal in terms of polishing. So those are like, I have a titanium watch. It's grade 2. It's all brushed for obvious reasons. However, it's very light, and that's part of the polarization. So some people don't like light watches. They feel cheap to them. And some people that don't like weight will be drawn towards titanium. Robust metal doesn't really offer you, in my opinion, a great benefit on scratching versus steel. However, it's very hypoallergenic, especially grade 2. So the problem with steel is it has nickel in it. And some people will have skin reactions to it. And that can even, while gold is hypoallergenic, it's an alloy for the case. It can't be pure gold. It'd be too soft. So that alloy means some people might have a reaction to gold. Less common than to steel, but it could happen. But titanium can get you out of a lot of that. And titanium is still a relatively affordable metal. So anyway, those are those poll results. So I thought it was pretty interesting, but I will catch up here with the chat. Well, I'm also going to go ahead in the process to start changing my screen share so that I can do the actual 4 watches that are going to be the focus of our video today. So we've got Chris from France. Hello, welcome to the live stream. Hope things are going well for you out. I guess it's in the evening over in France. If it is in the evening in Italy, I'm assuming it's maybe earlier evening in France, if my directional knowledge works the way it should. Let's see. Polipo thinks white gold is best. Koji feels or gives us full disclosure that he voted in this poll and he voted for platinum. And even though he didn't have one, but he loves the idea of platinum. Well, now I feel a little better that I put it as an option. Chris says there was some kind of hype with bronze some years ago. That is an excellent point, Chris. I debated. I made the poll, and then after I made the poll, I mentioned earlier how I thought maybe I should have put ceramic instead of platinum as a poll option. I did for a moment also think maybe I should have put bronze. The reason why I moved past on bronze, and I used to own a bronze watch, was kind of how you described it. There was hype a few years ago with it. There are some brands that continue to, Tudor still makes their bronze watch. I think Oris is pretty renowned for a few of their bronze watches. I think bronze is here to stay, but we're not in the fad anymore. So now it's kind of like there are a few brands that do some watches in bronze because there is a market for it. Ultimately, given that the other was like 5% of the poll, I think I was safe not doing bronze. I don't think it would have performed any better than platinum did, but I don't know. Your mileage may vary. That most of those other votes might have been bronze rather than ceramic, which I feel like is getting a lot more play lately. But that's kind of why that was in my headspace. Was it just wasn't just not the, as I'm snapping, it's just not the hot hip watch material like it was in 2018 or so, when I think it really took off. Tuna says lighter the better for me. That's why my Oris that I have, I don't have a bronze Oris, I have a titanium one. And the lightness is extremely attractive. I also kind of like, I don't know, there's almost maybe this is true. I haven't handled a bunch of titanium watches. There's almost a silky feel to the titanium bracelet that it has. Like, it's just kind of fun. Use it like a worry stone where you just kind of rub it. But I find sometimes I'm just rubbing the links on that bracelet, popping it off the wrist and just doing that. Cause the material just feels, even though I've owned that watch now for, I don't know, 3/4 of a year. Just the material is really smooth, and it just feels alien to me. I've never really handled a lot of stuff I wonder if people are doing that with the new iPhone. Are they just rubbing the edges of the case? It's going sound effect optional, of course. So let's see, Chris. Okay, 5 p.m. All right, early evening or late afternoon. We could interpret it either way. Koji says the Tudor silver case is pretty cool. Yes, on the Black Bay 58 silver, I love the look of that watch because I like how the silver. And Tudor does this with. I had a Tudor bronze watch at one point, and they did it the same way. Their alloy ages very well. It darkens overall. Not a lot of green in the case of the bronze, and from the examples I've seen of the silver, just gets sort of darker, but pretty even. Obviously, that'll vary perhaps a bit. Like if you're touching one edge more than another, the chemical reaction will vary to some degree, but I think it ages very gracefully, perhaps is a good way to describe it. And I really like the taupe dial and the bezel insert on that watch. The main reason I went and handled one of those at our local authorized dealer. The reason I never pulled the trigger on it is I hate the display case back on it. And because the Tudor in-house movement is totally Spartan, they made no effort to decorate it. It's like a Seiko 5. And that's fine, except it bugs me at the price that the watch is, and is as cheap as silver honestly is, that they cheaped out and didn't do a silver closed case back. So I suppose it's a fairly petty reason not to buy it, but you know what? It was enough. So maybe someday I'll change my mind, because that watch is quite wearable, at least for my wrist size, which is 6.75 inches. So anyway, moving on to the watches of today. We do not have a Tudor to talk about. We're actually going to open with a Panerai. So let me reactivate these shares and now tell it to share the Google Chrome that I've got. So this is what that looks weird. There we go. Now I'm a teeny tiny little square within a square. Koji does ask, why they didn't open case back on the silver Black Bay 58 baffles me. I get it. They did the same on the gold one. They, at the same time that watch dropped, they dropped an 18 karat yellow gold with a green dial watch. I didn't particularly care for it. Display case back. And that it made more sense because they were definitely, in my view, trying to save money on the amount of gold they were putting on that watch. But it just, I know people who bought it too. Like I've seen people post online that they bought that Tudor, and I thought, no, you must have. I'm more than willing to. I like gold. This is a gold watch. I would love to buy more gold watches. I am not buying a gold watch like that. If it's going to be a display case back gold watch, and this one is, you need to decorate the movement. You got to put a little effort in. I'm not even saying you got to go to this degree. It can be like Omega, machine decorate it, but decorate it. Don't like just flat bridges and I know it's not the main thing you look at, but come on. If you're not going to spring for close case back in gold, put some Genova stripes on it or something. Come on, try a little bit, just a little bit. Speaking of trying, or the lack thereof, here's the new Panerai Radiomir Officine, or is it how would it be said in Italian? Officine? Is it like Spanish? Officine? I took Spanish. I did not take Italian. Anyway, the PAM 01385. What is it? It's a radio mirror. It looks like every other Panerai I've ever seen. Not, though, a sandwich dial. It looks like you guys can put in your biases here. Mine's going to show clearly. Looks like they cheaped out a little bit. These seem to be indented slightly for the loom, so it looks like a sandwich dial, but it does not look like a sandwich dial. This just looks like almost like they just edged it a little bit. So looked like a little cost. That's going to make sense in a moment, though, because we're going to talk about the price of this watch. So anyway, this is supposedly inspired by a version they found on a receipt from 1935. So early, first run style Radiomir stylings, stainless steel. It's time only with a small seconds over at the 9 o'clock position. That's all there is to this watch. Runs at 3 hertz, 3-day power reserve. It's using the P6000, which is like the movement Panerai does in all their close case back watches. This is the time only close case back. Let me further clarify. Obviously, as you can see here, it is a close case back Radiomir, and this is a limited edition watch. Now, it's actually not badly priced for what Panerai tends to do. They've limited the count, I think, to 200, but it's $5,400 US. Did they say how much the limited count is? I wish a blog to watch would organize all the stats in an easy to see space. It's it's e-commerce exclusive, so you have to go online to purchase it. Maybe it's to purchase it new. So anyway, that's what that is. And longtime viewers, I'm just looking to see if it says if there's a particular count on this watch. Longtime viewers of the channel know I am not a fan of the Panerai design. I actually think it looks okay. I just don't think it would look okay on me. Here it is, 300 pieces, not 200. Okay. So, but they're the Paneristas. It's a popular watch style, so I wanted to discuss it because it's been a long, I cannot remember the last time I saw a limited edition Panerai that was actually this cheap, like this affordable. $5,400 for a Panerai. I think it was noted in this article that there's only one other watch on their website that is cheaper than this limited edition. And it is a Radiomir that is no seconds. It's time, it's hour minute only, and that's it. So now we can have a discussion, and those of you here live can, and if you're not watching live, go ahead and you can leave a comment on this, but we have a discussion. Do you think $5,400 for what this is an appropriate price? Panerai they run a little high in the dollar point for what I think you get, especially since there's a tremendous back catalog available used of watches that, less or more to me and my untrained eye, look kind of the same. But anyway, that's what we've got for you. So here's watch number 1 of 4 that I wanted to talk about that was recently revealed. So let me go ahead and catch up with the chat. This is more back on the Tudor discussion we were having, but Tunis is true. With no decoration, an open case back seems pretty pointless. And hey, tying it to this current watch discussion, I'm sure this is not a decorated movement, which is why Panerai, in my opinion, quite wisely hid it from view. Chris says, the Tudor movement is decorated like a Seiko 5 is. That's one of the reasons I'll perhaps never buy a Tudor. I'm totally cool with it if you hide it. Like, hide your shame. I'm honestly, as much as other things are moving, I want to do the other direction because of how the mirroring works on these cameras. As like Omega moves up price point, as JLC moves up price point, if Tudor's willing to still kind of hold the line where they're at in the market and just close case back that up, I like the movement. Like the movement I had their in-house movement in the Tudor. I had a Tudor Black Bay bronze, not the 58, the second gen one. So it wasn't the tropical brown dial. It's the gilt dial on black. Actually, they still make it. The 43 millimeter, very large watch. I barely could wear it, which is why I don't have it anymore. But the movement felt great to wind. It kept great time, and it was close case back. So I didn't have to look at how they didn't put any effort in decorating it. I bought it used, so I guess I shouldn't really be opining necessarily on how much Tudor asked for the watch. The watch, as it traded for less secondhand, I was quite comfortable with the price point, but your mileage may vary on that. And I can definitely understand that at these, I mean, it's luxury pricing regardless of what where in that luxury tier it is. I think it's totally fair to say, unless Tudor wants to start decorating, I'm not going to pull the trigger on them. There's plenty of other watch brands that will decorate. So Polipo says, check on Google the pronunciation of Officine. It's completely different than the way you pronounced it. Okay. I will go and I will look into it. I do apologize for the butchering that I did. Tuna says, you either love Panerai or you simply don't. Well, there might be some that simply hate Panerai too. Panerai has soured a lot of people, and it might not be the design either. So I know that's what you were getting at, Tuna, is the look of the Panerai watch line. I know some others have, felt, I guess, betrayed about like Panerai kind of fell in that Breitling boat for a while where they had some movements they were calling in-house that weren't really in-house. I still remember going and reading and seeing people showing the photos of the opening the case backs up, and then you see the ETA branding, like the number of the ETA movement on the base plate, and people calling them out. And then of course there's the whole other factor and part of the debate on the pricing of Panerai has been, it's so easy to clone. Like, I've heard people claim that for a few $100s, you can get like basically a 1-for-1 replica. Now, setting aside the illegalities and immorality behind those sort of watches, it is a bit concerning if you're saying this is a $5,000+ watch and it's something that a micro brand could basically do for you for under $1,000. Now, I get it. There's going to be some profit built, but again, outside of maybe the movements, what is Panerai really innovating? All their watches look the same to me, so I don't really get it. But that is what it is. Koji says Officine. Okay, thank you. See, Koji is my Google pronunciation tool. We call it Koji Translate. That's going to be the nickname for it. Oh, welcome, Jason. Greetings from Aruba. The only Tudor for me is the Monte Carlo. Well, hey, not even the Tudor Royal, huh? Well, at least you've narrowed it down to the one that draws you. Chris says this limited edition with this petite second is beautiful, but perhaps a bit expensive, even if there are only 300 examples. Yeah, I mean, overall as a layout, it looks well. I think the Fotina is integrated well with the strap. Like as far as I'd never owned this, but as far as Panerais go, I think it's a nice execution. Actually, I think Panerai does a pretty good job with the 9-second subdials, or in this case, small seconds. I think some other brands, it always looks a little weird. Always looks weird to a degree because it's so atypical, but I think they do a pretty clean execution on it. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that one up because it was one of the new ones. Now, let's move to the one. Let's move to the passion. This is the one that you all are passionate about, right? Love it or hate it. I mean, we had Tuna mention you either love Panerai or you simply don't. That might be the case for this. Now, this was the watch that I did put out a First Thoughts video on, so I'm not going to regurgitate everything. Well, maybe I will. Who knows? Who knows? But I want to go ahead and throw it in on the live stream because there were a lot of comments on the video where I gave my initial reactions to this watch. So it's a Planet Ocean, it's a GMT, and it's a little confusing. Actually, the first article I saw on this was not this Fratello one, which is linked in the video description if you want to read it. Was a blog to watch. And when a blog to watch had the article come out, I saw the article first before I went to Omega's website. The article said it was a titanium watch. Like it said the case was titanium. I then went to Omega's website that morning and Omega was saying it was a ceramic watch with like a titanium dial. And so I didn't record anything that morning because I'm like, I'm pretty sure Omega's right, but this is a pretty big mistake. A blog to watch got their article edited, I think within 90 minutes had fixed that. But they were the first to release something. So I guess someone misread something or misread the press release. I don't know. So anyway, this is not a titanium watch. It is a watch with titanium elements. So like here you see it says titanium caliber, and we'll get into that here in a moment, but you'll see some better views here. So basically what Omega has done is they've constructed the case out of a new version of ceramic, which is lighter than the typical ceramic that Omega uses. They then have this frosted titanium dial. They have the GMT functionality, and the GMT functionality movement is actually made out of, in terms of the bridges and plates, titanium as well. So all in an effort to reduce the weight of the Planet Ocean. The thing, though, that they didn't do is they didn't reduce the size of the Planet Ocean. And I mean that in all regards. This is still a 45.5 millimeter diameter version of this watch. This remains 17.4 millimeters thick. Granted, it is a 600 meter water resistant Planet Ocean. I mean, Planet Oceans are their deeper dive watch model line in the Seamaster family. And it still has the 22 millimeter lug width. So here are the overall stats. Again, I think I pretty well summarized it. So the case material, its technical term is silicon nitride ceramic, and I don't remember what the regular ceramic is called. Some other composition ceramic. It is significantly less, and I don't recall exactly by how much. They've saved, I think, over 50 grams versus the I think I found another ceramic version. And so they shaved a lot of weight off of it. Granted, I mean, it's already not the heaviest thing in the world because a lot of these Planet Oceans, they don't come on bracelet. So you can get them on, I mean, if you get a Planet Ocean on bracelet, you add a ton of weight, I don't think any of us are surprised in that regard. And my initial thoughts were, I mean, I like the color scheme. I've really liked a lot of the Planet Oceans with their splashes of orange that they do on a lot of the models and stuff. It's always resonated with me as a nice look. Again, kind of like the what is it? The Deep Sea, or is that the Submariner Plus? I don't mean the Deep Sea Challenge, but what I'm losing track. It doesn't matter. If you don't like Cyclops, this is my point. Rolex had a watch that was a little deeper. They didn't have the Cyclops like on the Submariner. Obviously, Omega doesn't do the Cyclopses on these, which again I think is appealing to a lot of people. But it's thick. It is a thick watch, and in fact, Part of the reason why I added a new for and 99 Cent Club members have access to it. I added a new emoji to the channel club memberships. It's the thick emoji. It's not this watch. It almost was. I took something a little more crown inspired for the icon, but I thought about this one. Because 17.4 millimeters is massive, and that's the same thickness as other 45.5 millimeter Planet Oceans. So it's, I'm okay with everything else about it, other than I did not touch on this in my video, but maybe they could have color matched the date window. Omega usually does color match date windows, not necessarily like in the DeVille line, but in the Seamaster line they do. Other than that, it was well proportioned. If you can live with the huge helium escape valve, the huge crown, and the huge thick watch of thick. But I mean, like color wise, it looks great. It's too bad that is, for a person like me, pretty much wholly unwearable. The lateral lug to lug isn't bad. 51.5. That's about the same as my Tudor Black Bay Bronze I had, 51.5. I basically can pull off of 52 or less. Again, 6.75 inch wrist, but it's close. It's close. And as thick as this watch is, I think that I hear ceramic is extremely robust. So maybe it won't be a problem as I smack this into every doorknob I encounter. I can't wear this though. I'm too accident prone. While I might not break it, I would wince every time I'd smack it into something. And I think I'm going to smack it into something every day I wear it. That's my guess. Tuna says, as I stated before, Dennis, probably great for what it actually is designed to do, but too cumbersome for the desk diver fraternity. Sure. And that it could be, and I've seen some, I think actually in the Fratello, again, link in the description below, the Fratello article has like 90 plus comments on it, way more than my video does. And there are people like just arguing over who is this watch for? Omega made a huge mistake. No, they didn't. You're just not the target market. That can all be totally fine. I mean, I would already say, though I know there are no people I know people do this, so it's not fair of me, but I could hypothetically say, are desk divers really buying the Planet Ocean? It's not really for them, is it? This is actually for real divers. Desk divers are supposed to be buying a regular Seamaster, like what I have, a 300M, right? That's what's desk diver oriented. This is a real tool watch for real people swimming in real water, not for people wearing at their desk. But you and I all know that there are plenty of people, maybe they have like 8-inch wrists, for example. They don't like the look of the 300M on their wrist. They like the look of the Planet Ocean on their wrist. And maybe they like this, or maybe they would like this if it isn't 17 millimeters thick. To me, it's less about this watch, and I want to go ahead and mule a little bit. Let me whine. It's my channel. I get to whine a little bit. My problem with Omega is not this watch. It's not this case material. It's not even this price point, which, I didn't mention here, $22,200 US. I think this article has it in euro. Yeah, 24,700 euro. So our Italian and French guests can enjoy not having to do the currency conversion. But I believe it's 22.2 in the US. Which, okay, we can argue whether or not that's worth it for the technology. It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be dismissive. 22,000 US is like, what is this? Like $4 or $5 grand more than the titanium Yachtmaster is from Rolex. This is serious money. This is the most expensive non-limited dive watch I know of in the world. But I'm sure there's more that you're like, Dennis, there are plenty that are more. But I used to be like upper end, like titanium Rolex and Blancpain retail prices were the most expensive when it came to true tool dive watches until like this thing. And I'm not counting like those like James Cameron edition super deeps. $22,000 for what on paper is a serious tool watch. Like this ain't precious metal. This is titanium and it's ceramic. All right, I guess I did whine a little bit about that versus what I meant to. But what I wanted to complain about is the coaxial movements. I hear a lot of people praise the coaxial movements. I mean, mine works fine in the one watch I have with one. But my problem with it is it seems like ever since Omega came out with their coaxial movement, which was quite a while ago, all they did was make their watches thicker. And it seems like Omega doesn't have a care in the world to try and reduce that. Whereas it seems like all their competitors do. Like all their competitors seem to have an eye towards, hey, we're putting out a new version of this watch. Maybe we could shave a few tenths of a millimeter off of the case size. Meanwhile, to me, it feels like, at least in the tool watch line, Omega's is kind of like, nobody cares. Whatever. It's not like we tacked on a whole new module, which we're going to get to in a moment, and just, made this watch, 3 millimeters thicker for no reason. This is what it is. So that's my problem I don't know if it's a coaxial movement problem and they don't want to redesign the movement and the movement's causing the issue. Or it's just, that's the design language like they've gone with, and they're like, we invested in the tooling for this size of case thickness and we're sticking with it. But I don't think Omega is doing themselves any favors with how thick these watches are. And this is a watch that's meant to be thick. I mean, it is a serious dive watch, but 17.4 millimeters. And it's not just this one. It's the older ones are like this too, that are not in this new material. That's what I'm whining about. But let's see. Koji, does it come in a min size? Joke of the day to Koji for that one. Perhaps they'll come out with the 50.5 millimeter version eventually. Chris says 45.5 millimeters. Do they plan to only sell it to the professional divers or to The Rock? Sorry, I had to do my Sean Connery, the movie The Rock version versus Dwayne and his new wax figurine that looks like Mr. Clean. Poor The Rock. I'm sure he'll get that sorted out. Obviously, and there've been, this is a common size in the Planet Ocean line. So that's why other than this is much lighter, the lug to lug, the thickness, and the diameter, this is standard for the Planet Ocean now. I know they've made smaller Planet Oceans in the past, though. I think someone commented on my First Thoughts video that they used to, or have done like 38.5 millimeter versions or something. I don't know. Maybe it was 39.5, something around that. So they've done smaller ones before. This ain't one. This is not one of them. This is definitely not one of those. Okay, so let's see. Moving along. Koji says those are some very rich divers getting this. Well, when you're going this deep, you're super professional, right? You reach that point where there you can look at the movement a little bit. You reach that point around 20,000 pounds. Yes, around 20,000 pounds. It's all huge. Yeah, 23,350 euro. Yeah, no, according per. I think this is probably because I checked for the US pricing. The 22.2 was right off Omega's website. And I think this was as well. 24,700 is what they're like. They've explicitly, like, you don't have to do the conversion. They're explicitly, this is what they list it for on the European side. So anyway, an interesting release. It's Omega. I think this one's going to get more talk than their whole. Remember they had all the blue watches come out, including a Planet Ocean. They had all those blue watches come out for summer that they unveiled in Greece. I think this looks better than that. And actually I thought the Planet Ocean looked pretty good on that, excuse me, on that set of watches. I think the problem for the blue Planet Ocean was it was completely overshadowed by the blue. I didn't swallow my drink right. The blue Pro Prof, because I thought the blue Pro Prof was like stole the show. Like it was definitely the most attractive. Talk about beefy watch. Let's talk about a non-beefy watch. Okay, we've gone from beef. Now it's time for veggies. Here's your veggies. The Ming LW01s. Their special projects cave is like their line where they do like their more experimental stuff. So anyway, Ming is an independent watch brand. They got quite a bit of attention early on. I think they won a few awards, and basically they've been moving more and more up market. I very briefly had a Ming. I had one of the Ming Machine Lab collabs I was able to buy as part of their, I don't know, they offered me the opportunity to buy the watch because their whole like first come first serve system fell apart. So they basically had to do a randomizer on it. And there's a whole story behind that. And I have videos about it. I have no intention of ever owning a Ming again because just for me, the crown that they like to go with on their watches, or at least on the 1709 I had, regardless of how much I'd push it up my wrist, if I'd reach into my pocket and have to flex my hand, it would just gouge into my wrist. I don't own watches that gouge into my wrist. That was the only one in recent memory I ever had that actually did it to like leaving a welt. So it had to go. So Mings are not for me, but your mileage may vary. And maybe this one wears different. So this is a super thin watch. That's what's so interesting about this. Now, those of us who are in the watch hobby, and you're probably in the watch hobby if you're watching this channel, thin watches are not something that is alien to us. We've seen a lot of extraordinarily thin watches from a lot of different brands, honestly. There's some like Piaget and Bulgari that are very renowned for having done thin watches. Obviously, there are very, very thin quartz watches, which you can get away with even easier. You just have to find a really thin power source. And then there are instances like this, and some of the aforementioned ones I had noted, that are mechanical. So the main thing they've done here is they really worked on, I should say, it's not so much thinness as lightness, but it is a really thin watch as well. So I want to touch on both aspects. So what they've done is they've used a composite, and I know it's here in the article. I think they have it down below also, but they've made actually they do. This is Fratello. They're going to have a good summary. So what they did is the case material is actually a magnesium alloy. And what I know in the article body, they actually explain what it is. It's like magnesium coupled with, I think, aluminum and manganese, I think. Yep. Oh, I left out zinc. My apologies. Magnesium, aluminum, zinc, manganese. So that's the alloy that they did to make the actual case to save weight. Then they also did PEEK case screws. I don't know what PEEK is. I haven't looked that up. To further reduce weight, so not like steel case screws. They used aluminum for the crown to further reduce weight. And this is not even sapphire crystal. This is Gorilla Glass, like what we see on phones, like cell phones. They used Gorilla Glass because it's very impact resistant, but it's also lighter than sapphire. So that's kind of the approach they've done. The watch size is actually pretty standard dress watch size. I think it's 38. Yeah, it's 38 millimeters. They got it down to 6.5 millimeters in thickness. So this is not going to win a thinness award, but this is an incredibly thin one. I've never owned a watch this thin. A lot of dress watches that aren't really necessarily pushing. Like I think, what is it? What's the big Breguet? I think Breguet's thin classique line comes in at around like 8.5 millimeters. And that's a thin, but not like trying to win records thin. This is driven by a ETA-based movement. It depends. This is actually a limited edition watch, which is standard for Ming. You can pick whether or not you want an automatic or a manual wind only. So that determines whether the base is using the M1 or the M2 out of the ETA 2000. And 4 hertz, 36-hour power reserve, so nothing really impressive there. One of the things that did surprise me is they weren't able to get the 30 meters of water resistance. They did have to drop it down to 25. Not a big sacrifice, but and for a dress watch, probably okay. Price-wise, quite high, but not shocking for 200 limited pieces and what they're doing. It's 19,500 Swiss francs. So sorry, you'll have to do your conversions here. Swiss francs, last I looked, were very similar to dollars. Dollar would be a little bit higher, probably closer to like 20,000 US dollars. But I think this would come in a little bit less than the Omega Seamaster that we just discussed. But anyway, that is this. They're doing this, with the handset to tell the time is like integrated in the movement, which kind of pops up here again to keep weight down as well as sizing. But really, I guess, an experiment of theirs to work on the weight. Really thin strap, again, to keep the weight down with, I think, a fixed bar system, kind of Pelagos-esque. Here's a better look at the hand so you can look at it. Hate the change that they did to this heart shape versus the circle. The circle I thought was a lot cleaner, but ever since they've come out with their new line, this is what they've been doing. So let me go ahead and catch up on the chat. Let's see. Tuna, and this was regarding the Omega, I believe, this is not cheap enough to get wet, because this obviously, as water resistant as it is not, you wouldn't want to get wet anyway. But back on the ceramic Planet Ocean, not the only person, Tuna, I've seen make the remark that at over $20,000 they would be afraid to get the dive watch wet, which is quite funny to me. Tuna says, I must admit, Ming do have some attractive designs. I love the 1709 aesthetically. Like, I liked the Messina Lab version. I like the Ming only version. Really, really liked it. Very, very attractive watch. I actually like a lot of what Ming has done. Just not comfortable for me to wear. So there was no point in me keeping the watch because I do not keep watches just sitting in a safe. I like to actually wear them. Koji says, I've got a bit of the thinness fetish, a couple dress watches around 6 millimeters. And as much as I appreciate the Ming at that price, sheesh, come on. It's the machining-esque. I mean, it's clearly the money ain't in the movement. The movement is nothing special. This is all about like coming up with the alloy. But do I believe they invented this alloy? No. I'm sure they found this composition existed and just decided to get it molded into a watch case. But yeah, when you're doing 200 and that mold's only going to be used for that, I think it's way too again, it's easy enough for me to say at $20,000, would I buy this or would I buy something else? And the answer is I would definitely buy something else. There's plenty of other stuff that I'd be interested in out of, well, I already mentioned Breguet, Chopard. I mean, there are a lot of dress watch brands that you could get a really nice watch, especially secondhand, for well under the 20,000. And if this works like other Mings tend to go for more secondhand than they do first party. So because they're so limited and there's such a collector demand for them. So basically, if you ain't buying this retail, you need to go ahead and expect that's probably going to cost you a little bit more on the secondhand market. So again, definitely not. And plus, this is just small and thin. I don't think this looks very much like a dress watch. Not with this. This material looks too much like titanium to me for it to be a proper dress watch. So I would roll it out for all those reasons. But I could definitely see why someone who's really into like the high-tech watch look, like this would be more interesting to me than carbon fiber, but it's also like 8 times more money. So it's just one of those things. Tuna says, I have a 1980 Seiko I don't know how to say that. LaSalle. That is pretty thin. Polipo has done the conversion for us from the Swiss francs into the euros, 20,436 euros. Okay, so, I mean, less than the planet ocean. I'd be more worried about breaking this, but this is definitely more unique. Chris says, about a week ago, Ming released another new product, much cheaper. I've logged on the website in exactly at the scheduled GMT time. Okay. Yeah, I tried to do that with the collab one, and the site crashed. And then they, I guess, tried to do it again, and it crashed again. And then they emailed. I was already subscribed to their newsletter, so I got one of the emails asking if I wanted to buy the. Well, they were already out of the cool honeycomb of the honey dial one, so I ended up with a black one. I have a few videos on it because, of course, the movement was broken, as they were on all the 1709 Messina Lab collabs, and they had to be fixed. So I had a whole video showcasing the problem with that watch. Still, it looked great. Chris continues, one click on the link for the new watch, and it was too soon. Time to return to the website and click again. They were already purchased. Yes, I hate that approach. I really wish they would honestly go back to what they had to do with the Messina Lab ones and like let people sign up on a list and do a randomizer. Is it unfair that people could stick in like 12 different Gmail accounts? Yes, it's absolutely unfair, but it's going to be easier. I think your odds are still better than trying to do the whole website thing. I don't know. There may be other ways to do it. Lotteries are just a better way than this. Spam the website and try and get it, because it's going to be at inconvenient hours for a bunch of people. They get up, something goes wrong. I mean, another thing, now I'm whining about Ming. Now, another thing that I know happened to Ming in the past, and they warn people about this, is people go to the shopping cart, do the checkout, the credit card is declined because the credit card doesn't recognize the transaction site. So you have to get the credit card to authorize. They have to try and do the transaction again. They're sold out by then. So Ming warns people to like preemptively go to your credit card company to get the site registered as whitelist it. But it doesn't always work for folks, or they don't know how to do it. I mean, it's just a mess. It's just a mess. And Chris says, it's way better to try and purchase Ming watches on the gray market. Yes. And hopefully some of them, now that we're post-pandemic, have come down in price. Back in the old days, they were all more than they were new. But again, if it's not a whole lot more, it may be worth it to you. It just depends on what you value. And Chris says, this last watch you were talking about is way too expensive for me. Well, I mean, this is their special project cave, or whatever they call. What do they call that? Their special projects cave. That's all their like uber expensive fancy stuff. Polipo says, like last week, I have to go back to work. Wish you all a nice week. See you next Saturday. Thanks for tuning in. I totally understand. Hopefully work goes smoothly for you. Well, for us in this stream, we're going to jump to the last watch I have as our topic. And how could I not? It's Christopher Ward time. All right. Hey, we talked about a $20,000 Ming. We talked about a $20,000 Seamaster. We talked about a Panerai that wasn't $20,000, but I want to act like it's $20,000 so that it sounds extra dramatic. So let's talk about a watch that isn't $20,000. And that is the new Christopher Ward C1 Moonphase. Now, Christopher Ward has had a Moonphase watch called the Moonglow for quite a while. This is not a discontinuation of the Moonglow. This is not like the new iteration of the Moonglow. They're separate watches. So if you like the Moonglow, my understanding is it still remains available and has been, as I've read, their most successful watch up until the Belcanto. So here we go. They're going with this Adventurine dial. Adventurine is that glass with the metal fragments in it. I'm sure you see the photos here. You're probably quite familiar with Adventurine dials because there are a number of brands that either do Adventurine dials or do dials that look like Adventurine. I mean, Moser has an Adventurine that's pretty well known. There's a Saxonia from Longa that has the look. I don't know if it's actually Adventurine glass in that case, but it has the look. People call it an Adventurine dial. I note that because someone in the comments and one of these things was arguing that the Longa shouldn't count. So I'm noting it here so no one gets me on a technicality. But as you can see, this is time only watch, sweeping central seconds. The Moonphase is in the top half of the dial. There are no indices. There are no markers on it. You can see the indentation at an angle in terms of how they've done it because this is a module. That is affixed on top of a Sellita SW200, I believe. Excuse me. Swiss made down at the 6 o'clock is the only labeling. There's no Christopher Ward logo on it. Stainless steel watch. And then they've loomed up the this sort of printed image of the moon, so it glows blue in nighttime. And that's the only loom on the watch. So overall, here's you got display case back. Here's a picture of the movement and automatic winding. I think this is like a 40.5 millimeter case sizing, 47.9 millimeter lug to lug distance. So pretty wearable for most wrists. This is pretty large for a dress watch if we want to treat it like that. Also pretty thick for a dress watch, though not necessarily thick for the diameter. 13.3 millimeters in thickness. Obviously, that is in part to accommodate the fact that this is a module for the Moonphase. This is not a movement designed to be a Moonphase by default. So they tack on their module on top of that Sellita movement to get what they want to do here. So the JJ04 is the name of the module. Accuracy is not great. It's minus to plus 20 seconds per day. SW200 movement. And that's a 4 hertz movement if you weren't familiar. Price varies a little bit if you want it on bracelet or so. All these photos are on strap, but you can get it on bracelet. Basically, it's $2,300 to $2,500 US dollars. So anyway, I'll be interested to see what you all in the live chat think about this watch. I thought about doing a first thoughts video and felt I'll just hold it for here. Let me start with, I guess, some of the positives, because I normally feel like I start with negatives when I talk Christopher Ward. And don't worry, I got plenty of negatives to say about this watch. So I think they overall have pulled off the Adventurine look quite well. I don't know that this is the most affordable Adventurine option that you have. I don't think that it is. However, it's on the lower end of the ones that I know of. So price-wise, if that's something you're really interested in, I think that's quite viable. If you're really into very predominant moon phases, again, moon phases often come in at a higher price point and often have a smaller aperture window. So this really, really, really emphasizes the moon. So in that regard, I think that's pretty strong. And overall, structurally, I think it's a nice, relatively clean execution. There are a few things to it that I'm not a huge fan of. Not super keen, but obviously your mileage will totally vary. That they went with a 40.5 millimeter diameter case for this. That's like Vacheron patrimony sizing. Bigger wrist individuals will probably like this. Smaller wrist individuals, it's still really wearable. The lug to lug is not extreme, so I don't want to be overly critical on it. But it, to me, and this might sound a little snooty, so apologies. A little bit of the snobbery, but it feels a little bit like, hey, we need to really call attention that we're doing a moon phase. So let's just make it really big instead of making it sophisticated. So we'll just throw it in your face a whole lot. So again, I could say, all right, because normally when I'd say 40.5, you could do stuff like this and not, like you could have a moon phase and not be a dress watch. But I can't argue this is anything but a dress watch because look at it. It's clearly not designed to be helpful in telling the time in very many ways. So I just think it's a little in your face, a little sport. It's like a sports watch person designing a dress watch. Maybe that's the best way to put it. So 40.5 millimeters is not an obscene sizing at all. And I'm perfectly fine with a dress watch even being that size. But given the size of the moon on it, it just seems a little like it's a little in your face for my tastes. Again, I think like straight on, they've done a really good. Now, this is kind of tricking you a little bit because of the light play. Straight on, I think they've done a pretty good job masking the how much lower the aperture disc is for the moon phase, but you can see it more at the angles. That might bother some people. I thought they did a pretty good job blending it overall, though. So I do think it was a pretty good effort to kind of hide the indentation that's necessary for this window because it is operating at a lower plane. You actually kind of see it more here in the loom shot. I thought the loom decision with the moon was actually really good. I thought that was pretty tasteful. I have seen a number of, and you can see it here more closely. Again, at a distance, I don't think this is going to be a problem, but some people have been bothered. Again, I guess it depends if you're one of those loop people that likes to look at all your watches under a loop all the time. The texture, the resolution, you can kind of see it here in the photo. Maybe I can blow it up a little bit more. It looks like, to some people, they go, the moon looks like a low resolution printer printed it. They don't like this texturing. You can see the print job is what I'm saying. You see the pixelation. So again, like at a distance, when you tell the time, I don't think you would notice this, but some people have complained. So I want to go ahead and note it that they notice compared to everything else that it looks like it was a low res, cheap print job on the moon. I don't know that it matters, but hey, if you're under a loop, maybe it does. Another thing that I get, like, I think this was the right decision on their part. I don't love this decision, but was it going ahead and keeping the center seconds hand? Again, at the price point they're operating in, a lot of people love, and I understand this because part of my brain works this way too. The idea of, hey, we have a mechanical watch. Don't we want to watch the second hand sweep? So they've got a 4 hertz movement. You get to enjoy that sweep. But it's so dressy and so not oriented telling the time. You're not going to be able to tell what second it is with this watch, much less you can't even tell the precise minutes with this watch. So again, I kind of wish they would have embraced the dress watch factor of it a little more and actually just done hour minute with this giant moon. I think would have been a really interesting choice. But I do think commercially, this was the right decision. What I don't think was the right decision, but maybe it was commercially, is this. The decision to not put their logo on this watch, but they just could not help themselves, and they had to put Swiss made. And let me use some loaded language. We'll be a little dramatic here. The cowardice behind this decision, the weakness that this conveys, that Christopher Ward is still not comfortable with its own ability to sell watches without hiding behind the Swiss label. Moser would never have done this. Moser doesn't put Swiss made on their watches, but they sure wouldn't have put Swiss made on a watch that doesn't even have indices on it. They didn't put the Christopher Ward logo. They didn't put a single indice on the watch. And yet we have to see this garish Swiss made in white floating here, mucking up what it was otherwise an incredibly respectful effort to execute an adventuring dial. Total miss. Maybe the only thing I can rationalize is they felt they have to say Swiss made because they're going to move more movements. If you know it's got a Swiss caliber in it, then they would if it's got a Miyota in it. Except I don't get it because the only people who care about that are people buying the watch, and you already got a display case back. So I'm sure it says Swiss made right here. It probably says it somewhere on the Selena movement if we move the rotor out of the way. We don't need it to say Swiss made, not when it's this clean. Look how clean they did. I mean, I would be out on this watch because it doesn't have the indices. And again, I can't get behind like the Mosers that don't have the indices. That's just a me thing. To not have the indices, but still smack Swiss made on it, bad. I hate that. I hate it. But that's just my personal reaction. So let me go ahead and here, I'll throw this up and catch up on what you all think about these watches. So I think looks like as I glance, the feedback by and large is most of you seem to like it quite a bit. Tuna says it looks like an attractive effort by Christopher Ward. Koji says it looks beautiful. Pixel Punch, welcome live stream, by the way, if I hadn't welcomed you already. I think this case size is too big for a dress watch. Kind of cheap looking too, somehow. Oh, okay. Well, maybe some of the things I pointed out might be kind of where your brain was at with it. Like the print quality on the moon, or how deeply sunken in this is. Again, it's a module. You get what you pay for, and we're not asking $20,000 for this watch. So, but that just comes at a price. Tuna does also feel that it is too large for a dress watch. Chris thinks the watch is beautiful, so he's right there with Koji and Tuna. Chris also thinks that this is a watch I can buy, and that I might buy myself. But I just received the MUN Origin 51 Red Edition, and I'm in love with this first Moonphase in my collection. And then he asks if I know about those watches. I do not. I will actually do a quick search here while I chat with you all to learn more, because I'm always happy to learn more about watches. But while we do that, all right. So Tuna also has a comment about the fact that Swiss Made does sell, even though he does seem to agree overall with my interpretation that it's not the best look for this particular watch. Yeah, I guess I get it. I did acknowledge it, so I suppose I do, but I just, they don't indices. Here's what I want to say, Tuna. Don't indices also sell watches? Doesn't the ability to tell the time sell a watch? It's things like that lead me to be like, can't we please just like either get rid of it or fully embrace everything about it. I just don't know. All right, I think I found here's something. Timekeepers Club. I've not been to the site before, to my knowledge. Yeah, fine. I'll accept your cookies. All right, so this is the Moon Project First Edition. And I know Chris said he had the 51 Red Edition, which I don't know what the differences will be, because I've only seen this one right now. But oh, good, I can zoom in on these. Now, this is the style of execution that I really like on a Moonphase. I don't need the Moonphases to be the full window. I do like it to be notable. So this is a really tasteful way. Plus the moon's pretty big. Like this is like a more interesting moon. I like this style of the moon stuff versus I don't own a Moonphase currently. I used to own a Glashütte, one of the original, the Panamanic Lunar because of the Moonphase. Was just like a little silver disc, just a little. They don't do the whole crescent thing. It was just a little round one, and the aperture would let you see if it was full or new, which was cool. But the complication itself, like there was no detail to it, if that makes sense. Now, I'm biased to things like this because, as again, longtime viewers know, I'm incredibly in favor of sunburst, radial brushing. Like those are like my favorite dial approaches. So I'm just a sucker for that sort of stuff. But and like see, they did it here in blue too. Blue's not my favorite. Like I probably lean more silver personally, though the blue looks quite good. But I like the idea of the blue moon disc. So like, did they do that one here? See, I just like it's just like that's where I like adventuring. Like I like adventuring. Like if the disc is adventuring with the moon on it, I think that's really, really cool versus having the whole dial. I've never been able to click with the adventuring dials themselves. Like I'd seen you used to be and probably still can, like in terms of like if you want to get into a Longa, like I don't think the secondhand, the adventuring Saxonias actually are, I think, fairly approachable, but they never really did anything for me. Just like emotionally, just doesn't really work for me. Pixel Punch says Christopher Ward used to do a deep stamped metal moon on their Moonphase years ago that looked infinitely better than this pixelated printed piece of paper moon. I'm not laughing. The burn was good. Let me full kudos to that. But I was laughing because you really had that alliteration going, the whole pixelated printed piece of paper. And I am also a sucker for alliteration, so I do appreciate it. Now I like this. How much are these? How much were these, I should say, because I think these are sold. Does the site say? Curious, because that's a really nice. Some of this look reminds me a little bit of what I would expect out of a Longines, and these are 36 millimeter watches, so quite dressy. Quartz, so I wouldn't think. Oh, they have a Kickstarter. Okay, yeah, I did see the Kickstarter page in my search too. I just didn't see as many good photos. These are a lot of photos. Okay, well, it's interesting. Yeah, no, that the MU:N. I don't know how we say. Do we call it Mun? Like that aesthetic look works better for me, but I'm just not a huge adventuring fan. But anyway, that's it. Those were the 4 new watches I wanted to go ahead and cover on the live stream. We got through that. We got through the polls that I'd done on the channel. And I think that's probably a good point to close it, because my voice is going to start giving out, and you all probably have stuff to do on your Saturdays. So those of you who watched live, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. If you're catching the recording, go ahead and comment on any of this stuff in the comment section. I do read those. I do try and reply to a lot of the comments. That's pretty much it. If you want to join the Discord or join the 99 Cent Club, there are links in the video description, and there's a link in the video description to all 4 of the articles that I relied on to talk about the 4 watches today. So that's it. Give you the rest of your weekends back, everyone. Take care, and I'll plan to be back next Saturday. See you later.